Yeah, it's a different.
Somebody when I was sitting out one of those Lego kids that was on $4.
Oh, yeah.
And it about went across the room, it's like, it is.
How are you? I buy those for my wife.
Do you?
Yeah, she likes doing it.
I like the simple. Um, I was going by that clock, which is not correct. Right. Are we going by that clock, which is 3 minutes off, or do we go by my?
What about your?
Okay, well, it's my 32.
It's 8.
That's where I got it.
Yeah, it's mine was 5:32.
Yeah.
I'm putting down Legos for now. I don't have any more space in the future. Unless somebody gives me the Millennium Falcon.
It's you.
I think sweet.
Maybe some of my kids.
Yeah.
I do like all the Iron Man and Spider-Man just. Us, yeah. I know, eighth grade history teacher is a quilter. A quilter. So she was, I'm not very good at it, but I like to do it. And she just graduated. I told her.
How are you?
She lives, I mean, she's from Kansas, but she went to college in Owensville. I told her, I said, I don't need t-shirts, do a t-shirt, but I'm trying to practice. That's what she said. She did. Yeah. And
She didn't like it, but she done. When my dad passed away on football because final shirt. Yeah. I saw his band. For hanging us out here.
Where am I?
Not yet, you're in my room.
Oh, in your room?
Yeah.
In your office?
You're in my office,
Trying to
right?
figure out where to put me, huh?
You're right on, yeah, you're right on the top of the pile that when Richard delivered them today, I think you were the first one up.
In front of his bank, and you bring some more. You iron your t-shirts.
No.
And you have.
Oh, because my wife folds them.
Oh. Yeah, he's very.
He won't.
That's right.
Hungry.
It's 5:35, like to call meeting to order, to join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, well, we're just gonna go through the first 4 things and go right to the consent agenda. Is there anything that you need to add or say to Brad?
I don't think I need that, no.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any further discussion? No, Don?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Motion passed 5-0. Public comments, petitions, and memorials, nothing under there, so we're gonna go on to old business. Mr. Nick, you're up.
No really new update. We do have locate cleared. We're gonna try to go in and rehab the ditch first, pull some trees and muscle the way through the brush. It's still been pretty heavy in there, so we're gonna start with that. not push forward with anything quite yet, unless you guys make a decision what we want to try. Sure, where we are financially, so. and then-
So you're trying to dig out the ditch with on the north side of Homestead?
Correct.
And then each.
Yeah, butts up against the back end of that property. Yeah. There's a bunch of trees and bushes and rock.
How far, how long of a stretch is that you have to clean out to go all the way down to Mid-Village Park or?
It's about 600 feet. Once, with some rains. We should make good progress.
Thursday, I think, before we the forecast. So,
How do you feel about work?
It's a good place to start. It's the cheapest place to start.
So is that dirt up, debris and all that up higher than the end of that tube, that 24-inch tube?
There are some areas in there that it is, where it pushes into one of the neighbors' backyards. So maybe we can streamline it. Start there. The ditch ought to be lowered for anything we want to do upstream anyway, so. Where we're gonna start.
any other questions? Brian, any questions?
I'd just like to, I think it'd be a good idea for us to do to find the property lines on each owners and find out exactly where the property lines end before we go real far on this. I just think that that's an important thing to find out for a long-term solution. And it'd probably only cost $300 to $500 to have that staked and find out where the property line is.
Great.
Does the city have an easement in that area too?
We do. I had Don track it down for us and we have ingress and egress easement for that.
Easement's where the creek is at, right?
Well, the easements where the alleyway would go, we have to go in back in behind there, but there's easement for them.
I'm talking about alongside the garage and where that 24-inch pipe is.
That, we didn't find that. It's just ingress egress easement for updates back there. So, yeah. I think so.
Well, it certainly can't hurt to start by cleaning that ditch out. You said it's something that can be done.
And I can, look into getting the survey done, that's something that's, easily done under my authority, so getting it done fairly quickly would be something I can do.
So we talking about the property lines on the east side.
Yeah,
line, and
That's correct, I think we're just trying to identify if we're going to be going to people's yards, who we need to be contacting on,
Oh, okay.
and things like that.
Oh,
So
gotcha. Yeah.
we want to make sure that we're making sure that we're contacting all property owners properly, and so
Gotcha.
identify who this property owners are going to be, is going to be pretty crucial.
Good place to start. Thank you, Nick.
Okay, moving on to the, new business. All right, J Enterprises LLC, memorandum of understanding.
So yes, this memorandum of understanding is through RHJ Enterprises. This is freelance brands KC. And so RHJ Enterprises has bought a building downtown here, which is 113 and 115 South Stokes, right up here on the courthouse square. They're looking to rehab that building. Some of the grants that they're wanting to utilize actually require that those go through the city. There is actually no cost to us to go ahead and approve this memorandum of understanding. This is just something that they're looking for, to try to get something going with that building. They've already done quite a bit of work to it. And like I said, it's a pretty, good thing for the city. And so really my recommendation here is to approve the memorandum of understanding between the city of Pine Bluff and RHJ Enterprises to allow freelance grants, KC, to seek grants for the rehabilitation and reuse of the it used to be called the Brown County Printing Building, located at 113, 113.5, and 115 and 115.5 South Sixth Street, and authorize the city administrator to sign the document.
I think which building that is, that were Dean Tunnel.
Dean also, oh, yeah.
Okay, just ones.
Yeah.
Okay. Make a motion? I'll make a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding between the city of Hiawatha and RHJ Enterprises LLC to allow freelance grants KC to seek grants for the rehabilitation and use of the historical Brown County Printing Building located 113 and 113.5 South Sixth and 115 and 115.5 South Sixth, and authorize the city administrator to sign the document.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any comments from the public? Public, anything?
These are gentlemen that we went into agreement with for the fire department, to the right grants.
Oh, James Farnham, as in like the old English teacher, James Farnham?
Yep.
Any further discussion from commissioners? No, Don? All there? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed 5-0. Item 3, 2027 budget discussion.
All right, so the budget discussion I was able to print out the 2027 budget for everybody. It might be hard to see on the screen. I am gonna go ahead and share that on the screen while I have this. So, let me connect real quick.
Last time it took my sound away. Right.
Here, a second. Let me try something.
And you can help me. Didn't know that was his job, thank you.
You have to allow them to share, you know. Let's see.
Here's from you. Which one?
All right, so while we're waiting for this, I will just start by saying that the budget that I have before you does reflect directly the full budget. So everything that we'll be talking about tonight, we won't be raising any property taxes at all. Any kind of raise that we got from the library, we won't be, our bill levy will drop, but our property tax income will not raise at all due to this budget. And so I would like to know if we can start out just by what general questions that you guys might have about the budget, anything that you thought of during, the review of it. And it doesn't matter to me how long this takes, I can go through each fund and look at it. We can start with the administration, of course. And we'll go through each fund, and or we can just answer some questions I'm here as long as you need. We can go through each, line item. If we just want to start with this would be for administration. In general fund revenue, there's really not, I would say that there's really not any major changes here. The only major change that we have is in the property tax revenue itself. And that is only due to the fact that when you do the state forms on this, it actually tells you where to populate all these numbers in at. And so it figures your ad valorem tax revenue, you know, and it also tells you where, like, for your motor vehicle tax, it'll show you where you actually need to put those things. And so those aren't things that I actually decide. The state form actually does all those things for you. As you put in your, I guess you would say, as you put in your expenses, that's how I come to those numbers. And so I just want everybody to understand how I come to those numbers. And so when you look at the 2027 budget, you know, the 489,348 for the property tax revenue, that is something that comes from the state form itself. It helps me out. I don't have to try to figure that out on my own. Like I said, 2026 budget was 486,000, raises slightly compared to what we had the year before. And as we go through this, I can kind of show, I have that now. But as we go through this, I can kind of show where, you know, how the costs affect our budget itself. So just starting with administration, I've done some things here since our last talk. Like I said, the 3 and 5% that we talked about was not going to work with a revenue neutral budget. It's something that just our budget cannot accommodate. And so I just left that alone for now.
We can do the 3% or.
We can do the 3%, that was always figured in. But the multiple pool was just, it was too cumbersome. To try to get that going. I think that having some different ideas about how to operate with our raises going into the future is probably a great idea. I think that, like, just a straight percentage raise, like somebody for myself, it kind of widens the gap. Like, if I was talking about me, I would get a bigger raise than, like, say, you know, a public works officer. And so I don't know how to get around that. I had some thoughts about that earlier today, but for this budget, it is just set at 3%. The salaries, as you can see, 2026 budget was 284,327. 2027 budget, and this is just administration alone, is 224,349. And the biggest reason why that's such a difference is because in order to accommodate a few of the things that we're going to be talking about here, I didn't completely revert back to the way it was in 2025, but I kind of did a little bit of a hybrid because last year I took a lot of the salaries back into administration, and I kind of did a little bit about halfway of the lateral on the ones between 2025 and 2026. That's why you see the difference there. But as we get going down towards some of the other expenditures coming out of administration or the general fund, that'll make sense. And really, as far as the administration goes, most of it is pretty well, I mean, even compared to what it has been in years past. And when you go through, like say, when I go through all these budgets and I look at all these line items, whether it be like, you know, equipment maintenance and rental, I actually look at the actual cost of them. And so you're able to see 2024, 2025, the actual cost and where those, you know, line items are. The only one that's really very much different here is the banner boxes. And that's because we don't know what we're going to do with those quite yet. I did put a little bit more money in there. That's under trees, landscaping cleanup. That's normally where we pay for the banner boxes out of. That's historically, that's where we've been taking it. It was 6,000. I put 10,000 in there. If we're going to do perennials, that it gives us room. if we're going to do trees of some sort, that also gives us room. And so I put a little bit extra in that one, really, and the only other major change here, and I'll get to this. Because it kind of, there's a reason why, and when I get to fire, you'll understand why I did this. For the short term, under transfer to capital reserve, I took that $25,000 out of it. Because I think that we need to accommodate some things in public safety, which need to be addressed. I think that when we get to fire, I think Patrick can kind of help me with that. He knows a lot better with the fire department on what they need, better than I do, but, well, I'll talk about that in just a moment. So that is really what I've done majorly with, the general fund itself. Does anybody, or with the administration side, does anybody have any questions there?
Just a general question, the column 2026 projected, you didn't try to populate that with anything, did you?
Not quite yet.
There's some numbers here and there, and I didn't.
There's some numbers here and there, but the numbers that are gonna be,
Like it made sense.
yeah, the numbers that, none of it really makes quite enough sense. Yeah, the one that I really like to look at on the projections are revenues. That's the one that I really like to, that I like to look at, because you kind of want to see how those are coming in. I still budgeted really conservatively on, where our sales tax revenues come in. You just don't know what the economy is going to do. Yeah, and a lot of the rest of those revenues, when you get into general fund revenue, those are going to be, some of those are set by the state, and some of these are, this fire contracts, for example, it's the same every year. Municipal fines and fees, we always get about the same amount coming, so. I just kind of left it flat on some of those. Police is what to talk about, so. And the chief has given you some information, some handouts today on this HPD staffing. I know that was a topic of discussion at one of our last budget work sessions. So for salaries, I have still budgeted for 9 positions. And so that's why the salaries look the way they do. 578,577 as opposed to 565,7 on one. So that's why those look the way that they do. And really, I think the biggest change here is I don't have a line item that really fit it very well. And so the 6011 is a line item that we use quite a bit, even in the administration side. I don't really like to call it a subsidy, but it's really to pay dispatch. That is where I've accommodated that 125,000 that we've discussed. That's where that has been accommodated at, which is really what has driven. That is the biggest factor that's driven what I've done here with the budget this year. Is trying to accommodate that 125,000 while staying revenue neutral. I've been able to do it a few different ways. Like I said, one of the ways I moved some costs out of administration as far as salaries goes, but there was also some costs that were able to be moved out of. Really the big one, and I'll get to it, was employee benefits, but I'll get to that later. Other than that, the cost of everything here stayed relatively flat. The transfer to capital reserve was left alone under police because there are certain things that they need in order to operate. Once again, we're transferring money in. We talked about this, I believe, 2 years ago. Patrol vehicles, equipment like cameras, things like that. And so that's where those transfers to capital reserve go. But I'll just leave it right there. Does anybody have any questions on or any thoughts on the PD, on the police budget?
Do we have an agreement for the dispatch? I mean, have they got back with us yet?
I have not seen an agreement at this time, no. The last thing that we've done is send a letter to the county stating what we offer.
What we're offering?
Yes,
Okay. So then when we need to get word back from them and then approve it.
yes.
Okay, we need to probably get that done before we, get too far away, don't we?
We do need to get that done sooner than later, but like I said, I've gone to at least one meeting there where I talked to them about it and once again, sent them a letter, waiting for a response from them at this point.
Just to back up a minute,
Sure.
I'm way back on, has the library contacted you at all with, you have any idea on what they're gonna request?
Yes, and so this will be reflected in this budget, and I will talk about that
Okay.
when I get there, but
When you
I
get there, okay.
know exactly what they're going to request. Their mill levy goes down just slightly, I think they're at 6.7 last year, they're gonna be right around, if everything from the state form, 6.5 this year, is where they're going to be. But I'll get to that one. Hey,
Another question,
go ahead.
under the administration on the guest tax,
Mhm.
does that apply to, the, trailer parks to the mobile home? Like the RV park?
No, they do not.
Does not?
And I already talked to them about that, no, and in fact, our last, guest tax, we got our first Airbnb. Well, evidently we got an Airbnb in town, and they left that, but yeah, I did reach out about that. And, you have, I guess I think trailer homes,
Because they're mobile,
because they're, the trailer homes, like out on North First Street.
like fifth wheels.
No, I'm thinking trailer homes, not travel trailers, trailer homes.
Trap.
So the trailer homes obviously are under the home. And
Right.
travel trailers, RVs, that kind of stuff, they have to be there for more than 30 days. And more than 30 days. I called about it because I questioned if we should be getting transient guest tax on all,
Okay,
and the state.
thanks for checking into that.
Yeah,
That was on my mind.
what about Tufton? How they was there?
Oh, I have that comes out of, I have that coming out of the industrial fund now.
Figure it somewhere.
Yeah, so that comes out of the industrial fund, under the economic development section, this is where I have that. No, that's something we did last year to also help keep the mill levy down as far as possible.
I just want to take a minute to look over what the chief
Yeah,
prepared, if
absolutely.
we could. We haven't had a chance to even look at it yet. Really well together, thank you. Is there anything you'd like to add to this?
Not to be redundant. But, for the request from the commission and was mentioned also by Mr. Shepherd is to bring some data to you. So that's what I did. I reached out to a lot of agencies, did some research on national standards. Where another be national standards for BB 11.52 officers. If we went across the national standards, so that's just something to look at because that's what it is across the way. But if you look at the one where it says Kansas state agencies, if you put all the agencies our size, 400 plus from us, there's 8 agencies in total. They're sitting at authorized 8.5. I'm asking for 9. They're also sitting currently averaging about 7, but every single one that's less than their average is begging for people, and they're suffering. Some of those agencies don't even have 24-hour coverage. These are larger agencies. Lions is a prime example, whose violent crime rate is higher than our crime rate as far as violent crimes. And they're trying to make it with 3 officers in reserve. And they're suffering pretty bad. They don't even have night coverage. They're only covering, as they said, what they can, which is quite frankly scary for those guys. A lot of the agencies there, and I put that in the 5th column, are adding people to get up to 10 across the board, and that's specifically for Garnett, Beloit, and even Frontec is going to go to 11. They're trying to hire up to staffing in Marysville. They want to add a detective down in Holton, and they're steady above that. What is important about this is the UCR data, which says, what's our crime rate compared to everybody else. If you look at us, our overall crime rate is the highest of the 8 agencies, and our property crime rate is the highest of all the 8 agencies. But on the flip side, our clearance rate is about 25, when the average clearance rate is going to be well below that, either 20s or 18s across the board. So we have more crimes happening, but we're clearing more crimes than everybody else, which is pretty illustrative of the fact of the work that the folks do, especially with having a detective that's working some full-time stuff along with the SRO gig. But what was asked was, hey, what about Sabetha? What about Seneca? What about Holton? Where do we compare? Well, I put those down there for you. Sabetha, you look at the population, it's a little bit less than us. Seneca's 1,000 less than us, and Horton is even worse. I can't really give you UCR data for the first 2 because they didn't even report out. Seneca told me our crime rate is so low, we just have nighttime guys on call. We don't even have to put anybody out. That has to do with demographics, has to do with population there. Good old Horton, they gave up a person to code enforcement down to 5, but in the same token, they're working 12-hour shifts. So those guys are working long days to try to get anything done. And Sabetha, sitting at 4 folks, they don't have anybody on after midnight. That's for the chief. So if you want to roll the dice on that's a prerogative that you'd have to make. If you want to do that. We of course have a dedicated person overnight doing patrol work, good place work. So that makes it a little bit different. And especially when you talk about apples and oranges, Sabetha, Seneca, and Horton, yeah, they have less officers because they have less population. They just a fact, and 2 of them don't even have enough reported crime to put stats up for you. So it's unfortunate, but that's the best I can do on that. And I mentioned the main proposal that I made in regards to some cost savings, where we were able to, in my prerogative or in my opinion, cut that PO3 position, which is a code enforcement position, save about $90,000 for the city, put that back into the program. And then on that proposal, it mentions the advantages we get with that, which is the training time, the collateral assignment time, and meeting the expectations. On the next page, I talk about HPD. I talk about the services we provide here in this community. That digital forensics, none of these other agencies have anything like that. We're a leader in that in this Northeast region. And of course, that extends all the way to Missouri, all the way to Nebraska. We even get Secret Service and the KBI bring their stuff to us. So that's pretty impressive that they do. When they do bring that stuff to us, that means we just get better because we're doing better investigations, helping other folks out. So that's why I think that you'll find the level of investigation, either patrol level or detective level, is quite high comparatively speaking to maybe some other agencies which don't even have a dedicated detective or don't even have people who are capable of doing that. Paige right now is working a major case. I'm not gonna go into it, but it's one that's gonna directly impacts upon those digital forensics. And having that apparatus, having that ability, leapfrogs us into the future, and which is where crime goes. And you talk about small town amenities, the things that we do for the people. We are pleased to do that. We want to do those things. People call us for things that you might not even get to in other agencies, just they don't have the manpower. But we do these things and we're happy to do those things. But I've mentioned down there the last two bullets is, especially the last bullet. I've spoken before about the need for critical skills training and collateral assignment stuff that we need to be able to do, make sure we're meeting any requirements that's required by the state, or even get us as low as liability as possible, with the end goal, quite frankly, is to try to get us accredited. Because we can get accredited, that lowers our liability insurance quite a bit. So I don't, not to lead out to much the accreditation with the state. So that's this right here kind of capsulizes the previous proposal I made, plus it gives you the data. So you can make some comparisons from other agencies our size, as well as the other 3 neighboring agencies, which are much smaller than us. Are there any questions?
How do you feel the code enforcement, how's that going as we're transitioning to that method?
I think you'll be very pleased in the amount of work that we're doing on code. I know working with Chad, because Chad's doing the major stuff, like the long-term guy, and we're taking care of all the other ones, and we're being pretty productive in that. We have several that are right on the verge of the 4th phase, or I'm sorry, 3rd phase, which is the NTA phase. With all of our documentation, we shouldn't have any issues whatsoever to give something to Mr. Delaney to be able to handle these things. I've noticed too that some surprising things have happened. Derelict cars are disappearing. Some things, yards are getting cleaned up. I think it's just word of mouth, quite frankly. Plus, there's a little bit of information out on social media, which seems to be carrying some weight. I mean, we even had grass clipping conversations.
I've had several comments on that.
Well, and I drove around on Saturday and Sunday and I went, well, there's not much in the street.
It's good.
Yeah, and mind you, these photographs were taken, I'm sorry, what's the gentleman's name?
Gene Outland.
Yeah, Gene's the one that took those photos the day before he came to Saugeen. All over the city, that mess was existing. And he brought those photos to Brad and I. Very concerned over the topics, which is motorcyclists as well as the storm drains and everything. We put that out, had some really great comments. A lot of some supportive stuff. Some people making fun of us. It's okay, I don't mind. But I noticed that there was a lot of folks saying, yeah, it looks horrible. And when I went around on Saturday and Sunday, I didn't see as much. So I hope the word's getting out. It seems like it is. Because we didn't have to give any tickets for anybody throwing their grass in the road this weekend.
So what you're saying is there is a good use for social media.
There can be a good use of social media as long as we don't engage in any tit for tat. We don't do that. So,
And you're always gonna get some of those stupid comments. I'm sorry, they're stupid comments and snarky remarks. It is what it is, but ultimately it's a safety issue. And the grass going into the storm sewers just adds to the rest of the problem.
Sure.
So
sure.
ultimately, I'm glad that you did put that out. And I also want to thank you for putting this together because that answered every question I have. I would fully support your proposal.
And if you guys need any more research or anything, then I'll be obviously glad to do it.
I got a general question.
Yes, sir.
Not the specific stuff you have in here, but this crime rate index.
Mhm.
Do you think all the agencies report in the same manner? I don't know how that works or who that goes to, but
It was,
some office has some high numbers, but do we report stuff that other people don't report?
well,
No
actually,
dispute?
the UCR crime rate is based upon 8 specific crimes. Homicide, rape, robbery, ag assault, burglaries, larcenies, motor vehicle theft, and arson.
Okay.
Those are the only things that go into the UCR Part 1. Everything else will go into part two or whatever it might be, but it won't be as part one.
Okay.
We report what we do. We report the calls that come in for service. We don't budget numbers, we don't do around. We certainly don't pad stats. We're not gonna do that, because that would be unethical. But this is exactly where we reported back in 2024, 25, et cetera, and this is 2025 data. So it was exactly what we reported based upon the reports that we took from citizens in this community. And this is the numbers that we came up with. Most likely, most of this is driven, of course, by the property crimes, burglaries, larcenies, motor vehicle theft, and arson, which we have a number of those, and we need to get those things down. Hopefully, we'll have an opportunity to curtail those numbers and start working on those things and push those things down if we have the appropriate amount of people that have the time to do the investigations. But those are numbers.
I was just curious how that works. I don't.
Well,
knowledgeable.
from experience, there was a city that was a joining agency in my agency in California, who instead of going out and taking a burglary call for a vehicle, for instance, they would send a letter out here, fill this letter out and send it back to us, and we'll record the stat. And we'll send a person to go fingerprint your vehicle in about a week. Well, that's nonsensical. They were purposely trying to lower their numbers.
Okay.
Well, and that's unethical. You should never do that. That's not true, because when you do that, then you're just making stuff up. These are hard, fast numbers, and Mark verified these things. And this is right out of the FBI, and you see our data for TBI. Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd just like to add, I guess I was under the impression that we needed to not hire we were cutting back 2 officers basically to pay for dispatch. So how are we paying for dispatch now if we are already allotted to have another officer in there?
So a lot of the money came from, when you move certain funds around, especially, personnel costs, when you really get into a lot of the money itself came from employee benefits, which I will be getting to before too long, but it's something that I've, talked about. It's, where are we budgeting appropriately for employee benefits? And like I said, I can kind of explain all that. I can do it now, if you like, actually. We'll just get that one out of the way.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I feel like, we're raising, wages 3% and adding officers, and, we're staying revenue neutral. Well, we're shifting money around, but what this normally does is it comes back to haunt us. And then we have a year where we have to raise taxes 14% 2 years in a row. And so I want to make sure, yes, we're staying revenue neutral, but we're adding a lot of things that we weren't planning on. And this is how you get yourself in trouble down the road. So just be mindful of that.
But this is what's most budgeted though, right? I mean,
Yeah. I mean, I know that early on, when I was trying to think about what we were going to do, I did have certain thoughts because I was trying to wrap my head around how we're going to do this. And it took me really getting deep into the budget and asking some really kind of difficult questions. Like I said, when you come down here to employee benefits, if you look at and really the line item that I want everybody to look at is a group health and accident line item. And so if you look at what we budgeted for 2026, and what our 2024 actual number is, 2025 actual number is, you see there's a large difference. That's much more than a 10% increase. And so I had to really dive in and see why, we have $150,000 difference between the actual numbers paid in 2025 and what's budgeted in 2026. The budget was based off of whatever each person was at, whether it was, we offer for, was whether it was plan D or whether it was plan A, that 474,000 was budgeted when they were at. I didn't fully understand that at that time. I had to come back and look at that and say, oh, you know, okay, well, we're paying about, I'd say, you know, $27,000 a month for our Blue Cross Blue Shield. That's the city's portion of it. And so I did try to offset some of that by having an employee contribution, which is really, if you go into reimbursed expenses, it ends up being an unrealized, the money never goes into an account necessarily. I try to account for that money somehow to offset the bill levy being so high. And so, but what I failed to realize is that we need to be budgeting where the city's portion of this is going to be, not where everybody's going to fall off of this. And so looking at where the actual costs, where the employees fall, and not only that, but leaving, you know, some room for it, yet still get a raise. And we don't know what insurance is going to do, especially with health insurance. That's where a lot of that money came from. So we went from 474,000 to 381,000. And so, and a lot of the other cuts that came through, how to accommodate it was just looking at the budgets. Are we budgeting appropriately for certain things? And so that's kind of how that was done. It's kind of complicated. I really had to get into the pay and look at where everybody was at, what the city's actually paid per person. And then we can, and then look at it from there. That's where a big chunk of that money came from. If any of that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, that does make sense. It's just what happens when it goes up 10% next year again. And then you've got all these, you've got extra employees, and then you have to raise taxes because you have to have your employee benefits. So I just want to be mindful. Yeah, we're making it work, but it could come back to haunt us later. Employees are one of the biggest expenditures of the city, and employee benefits is one of the most. I mean, you can't get around not having those, or really even, we've cut those back as much as we can. So once you hire the people, and if that expenditure goes up, we'll have a problem next year. So
I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
So we'll go to municipal courts pretty easy. I mean, there's really not anything to talk about with municipal court, at least not too much. I mean, the expenses they're staying pretty flat. I mean, I think we're budgeting appropriately for municipal court. Salaries went up a little bit, let's see what difference. Fire is a little bit more of a discussion. There's going to be a few things that I'd like to point out here, and Patrick could probably explain some of the things that are going on with fire. But I can just very quickly point out there's a couple of line items that we have some extra money in. One of them would be professional and IT services. For the professional services that we're talking about here, we're actually talking about grant writing. Same company that I talked about earlier today, Freeway Experience. Patrick really wants to start utilizing some grant writing. I know we have some building issues that they want to get addressed. Patrick, if you'd like to address the commission right now, but be perfect.
I think it was 2 months ago, we went into agreement with James to explore the possibility of private funding, private grants, businesses, not state, not federal, not county grant funding. We started getting into that. Mr. Menendorf, you went through it with us when we went through the engineering firm. You know, a simple building is going to go millions of dollars, and we start using public dollars. When you use private funds, it doesn't cost $9 for a screw. It doesn't cost $400 for a teacher. So that's what I'm trying to stay away. And as much money as that we can obtain through some of these private grants, along with the money that the community has already graciously given to us, that's in our community foundation account, we're not far off from the company. We really truly are. It's just a couple of just a push. So, and those of you that have been down to the fire station, you see the condition of the fire station. You see, we tried to renovate the old gas station. It's working. How long will how long we'll be able to keep the center box on the south side of that. I don't know, I'm a new guy, away from slipping the clutch in one of those bumpers, we have gaping holes back in it, so. But that's, James is already working on it, he's already found some, he's putting pamphlets together for us right now, it's the last update, I think it's 2 weeks ago, so.
And there is a little bit of a difference, capital 8990, firefighter equipment, this is something that's very important, I think Patrick did very well explained. But we had talked about some thermal cameras, I believe there was, what else did you have in there?
Yep, so we did have some capital money, we purchased, we found a 360-degree thermal imager that we can mount on a truck, it's actually movable, so we move it from truck to truck. But what we're finding out is, and hopefully we don't run into this, is that some of these apartments are going out on wildland fires, they're going into a field they're not familiar with, they're running into the smoke, not seeing the 10-foot, 20-foot ditch. Limiter on the front of that truck, hey, that ditch is wide open, you can see it. So the camera can pan 360 degrees, there's a tablet mounted in the vehicle that can, the passenger can pan around and see it. That way, in the unfortunate event a firefighter is involved or overcome by flames, they can actually see a possible clear path out. So, and not run into the ditch.
That's something you can hold your hand to and go into a building that's.
Sorry to have one of those.
You already have those?
Yeah, we have one. Got two.
But just some general safety things, I even talked about the fire department thing, I believe that it would be appropriate for this budget. And just the only other thing is, I think they need some tires on the truck, so a little bit more tires this next year. And that's really, it's kind of a minor change, but that's really about it. As far as the fire
I
department.
think we're at about a 5-year mark on some of our 1.5 line being by all technicalities out of compliance, but it's okay. They still pass us. We're not gonna go out and spend a whole bunch of money just to revamp every single truck full of 1.5 inch. It's not necessary. You can buy, 150 or 200 feet. It's simple.
As long as we're meeting standards. Yes. You better not do.
We put the wet stuff on the red stuff. As long as the wet stuff gets to the red stuff, it's got its stuff.
Glad you could explain it to me in a way I can understand. I appreciate that. At least you haven't had many grass fires this year, have you?
Last month was busy for July. We had 16
Much
calls.
rain this weekend?
We had 16 calls last month. We just had went on mutual aid earlier today. But got started, but canceled before we got there. Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Probably one of the lights, this one's pretty simple, like I said, it's pretty straightforward. It's just a little bit of maintenance, mostly electricity, standards are posted in the lights downtown, things like that. Mostly electricity on that one, a little bit of maintenance, because when you get into like the lights downtown, we do have a fund, the post lantern project that we still have about $92,000 in, that I'd like to, we need to spend that money, but we can only spend it on the post lantern lights themselves. But I can't spend it on the lights downtown, for example, because the tax was, yeah. The tax was for the post lantern, not any of the lights, so you have to be really careful about when to spend that money on. It's not a bunch of that in there in case we need some maintenance done, bulbs, whatever it may be, it's still able to take care of the other lights.
The lights at the ballpark.
The new lights in the ballpark, those are going to be, very expensive. I know that we've talked to a couple of companies about those. Musco is one that we talked about just here recently. They were going to give us a price on Noble and see how we can phase it or what we could do there. But at least before, I don't have the answer to that question. I just know everybody that I've talked to, I mean, we're gonna be spending, you know, it could be $30,000 a field, you know, just for lights at the ballparks,
We can't use that money that's in the other account for that.
which,
That's what I was asking, that.
that light post right on the account. No, you can't use it for those lights. You have to,
That was my question.
yeah, you know, you can only use it for just a post layer project, so just a residential street lights, that's all we use that for.
Brad, I thought we were gonna fix the lights on 8th Street. Is it eight,
That-
8th?
They did finally get that call in, and so Chad has an idea about how to fix those lights, and so that should be moving forward fairly quick.
And that will be fairly, it's not gonna be cheap though, right?
It depends on what they have to do. You have to call a boring company to come in and bore new lines in, that'll drive the cost up significantly. If we have, if they're able to find where that break was, pull new line, fix a conduit, it could, you know, that could lower the cost significantly. They just gotta figure it out. He has a place identified where he thinks that break is, where it was hit. He's going to have it excavated there. Probably with the hydro excavator, I think they put a new gas line in on that side. So they're gonna be as careful as possible there. See if he can identify where that break is. And if we can identify where it is, fix final, we'll do, wiring, which also isn't cheap, but we can take it out of that fund. And so it's going to come out of that post landing fund as well. We're gonna have.
Well, I mean, I guess, couldn't we just take it out of this fund and then not have the fund anymore?
Yeah, and so we could, I mean, you could. That is kind of the idea. I wanna get that money spent. There's new bases that we need to have done. I have a lot of ideas about it. We need to fix the poles that are leaning, things like that. But get that money spent, and then not have the fund anymore. That is the idea.
When the bases are, that's a challenge, isn't it?
Is we have the mold.
We're getting a new boring machine next year, right? We can bore that stuff.
We, no, that boring machine, I mean, we had it on for this year, I don't know how we're going to move forward with that quite yet, but we'll, talk to Ryan with you back tomorrow, a little bit more about it, but, the big directional boring machines, those are going to be a little bit cost prohibitive. I think the last time I checked that, smallest one they could buy was around $10,000 or something like that.
Alrighty then.
The liability insurance that you have to carry with one of those things, it's probably not something that I'd recommend getting into. Little tiny ones, maybe, but the big ones that can do those types of jobs, probably. But that's kind of the lights fund there. Coded building, same thing, there's no salaries there at all. I've left $7,000 in demolition expenses. Doesn't have to be demolition expenses, it can be abatement expenses, any expense that we incur on, if we have to go clean a property up, for example, and we have dump fees, that's where that would come from.
Have you noticed any improvement in? Since they sold all the lots at the tax sale, have we reduced how many lots we have to mow yet, or do you know? Is it?
So, Andy, when there's a tax sale, there's a redemption period involved with that, is there not?
Go ahead of this?
We've still been, is a good word.
Yeah, there's a redemption anytime a property's foreclosed, whether it's private foreclosure or whether it's tax foreclosure. Once the property's sold, there is a redemption period. You can come back in and pay your taxes. So our city assessments were extinguished, part of the older ones. I think Brad and I talked about whether we wanted to challenge that and thought, let's get the properties into some hands that we don't have to take care of them anymore. But the costs incurred right now, we'll get those back when they pay their next year. We'll pay the taxes. So,
I didn't know if the new owners are officially the owner now and they should mow their own stuff or.
I want to say it was a 90-day redemption period, so I'll have to check on that. But surely, I think if I bought one, I'd be mowing it just in case, but that's cool. it's a lot cheaper for me to do it than the city.
Yeah.
But we can get you a report from the tax sale. They've already started the next one, so they spot that.
Good.
And so this brings us to library, which would be, you know, a topic of discussion here, and so I did work with Aaron on getting what their numbers were going to be. I did contact her again last week to make sure that, hey, we're gonna go out and advertise for this, you guys are solid with your numbers, she said yes. And so where their expenditures are going to be, as you can see, 2024 is 226,000, 2026, 258. You know, 278 this year, a little bit less than what it was the year before, still about $20,000 more. If you actually figure out how many bills are going to need for that, it comes out to more like 6.5. There were around 6.7 last year. 7.5 is under the cap.
So they are raising it again, Brad?
They are. They're raising their expenditures by 20,000.
Okay, so that's something else that we're having to eat this year. So
Yes,
What's their mill levy cap?
7.5.
Are we getting close to that?
They're at 6.5 right now. Yeah, by the proposed budget this year, they'll be at 6.5. Industrial fund is pretty straightforward. That's the city sales tax. That's our economic development sales tax. That's where the appropriation for HUD comes out of. The only other item that's in this one, there's actually two. But one of them is just a reimbursement to the CIP fund. And that's for the project engineering that we incurred, you know, I think it's been a year ago now. And so that's still budgeted in there. I do put the rest down as an economic development expense. It's something that, you know, I think this has come up a few times. What are we going to do with that money? What are we gonna do with tax? We have the budget authority if something does come up, to do something with that money, you know, just the money that's coming in. So that is something that we do need to figure out, is what are we going to do with the, you know, economic development dollars that we do have coming in? How does that support, what's the best use? And so that is a topic of discussion. I did the same thing last year. I put it down as an expense. That's what we're using for the, utilities for the project out there at Rooney Park. So that's the industrial fund, kind of summed up really quickly, but that's where that money does go. That sales tax that I'm talking about in the industrial fund is 2035 sunset. So that's what we're looking at. Special Parks and Rec Fund, this is the liquor tax that we get every year. The Special Parks and Rec, if you budget, they send you the money that you're supposed to budget for this. I don't figure this, they figure this for me. $10,112. I mean, you have to be careful when you go to spend this money, because you never get as much in liquor tax as they say you're going to. So you have to really be cautious. Stacy always does a pretty good job with that. As you can see, your actual money spent on this is, you know, you like 2,500, 1,779. You know, we receive under half of what they tell us to budget. Normally what she does with this is she gets money every year for new rubberized mulch at the parks, and normally that's what she spends that money on. It has to be spent towards those types of items at parks. Special street would be our special street sales tax that we have. Most of it is transferred to bonded interest at $301,412. It's up from 277, but as we know, this is part of the bond that we took out for the traffic signal. That's why that number is different. Other than that, the rest of it I have in capital, in case we want to use that money to go towards streets, but you have to use that money towards actual material that goes on the street. We can't use that money towards equipment. We can't use that money towards personnel services, anything like that. It actually has to go to, like say asphalt, concrete, something like that.
That include curbs.
It can include curbs, yes. Parks and Rec revenue is, once again, I think their ad valorem tax is lower than what it was last year. Some of it, and all the taxes in there in the revenue side, the only other major part of the revenue is concession income. They've been doing well with concession income this year. It's one of those things that I'm still, you don't know, that's hard to predict. I left it flat. Charging users, Fisher Center rent, things like that. We usually do pretty well there. I left those revenues pretty flat. Just to, we haven't upped those numbers any, that usually stays pretty busy. I don't expect that there's gonna be huge changes in those types of revenues. Expense wise, not really a lot here to talk about. We don't have anything going towards CIP other than putting away money for lawnmower replacement. I think we have us buying a new lawnmower for 2 years. We have a little bit of money going in to reimburse the tractor that we paid for last year. And so that's where their capital improvement does go into. Really what I wanted to look at this next year for Parks and Rec was spending money on the parks that we do have here, like putting money into equipment, things like that. Coming up with a plan to, how are we going to maintain what we have first? Now, how much money does it cost us? Those are important questions to ask. And so if we need to keep on top of painting, staining, whatever it may be, mulch, paint, whatever it is, we need to be able to calculate those costs. That way we can get an idea of what it costs for us just to maintain what we have. Then we can start looking at, say, how are we going to start improving on these things? Playground equipment is one of the it's very cost prohibitive, very expensive. This is going to be something that we have to maybe look at programs for. I know we've utilized those in the past a couple of different times. We've had some donations that came in for some of the equipment that we've had. I think the kiddie corral was a good example of that. But we need to, it's hard to talk about getting new playground equipment. It's easier for, like say, basketball goals. If we wanted to replace those at Star Park, that's not that expensive. We need to really start thinking about how we can expand some of what we can do within our own means of doing that without spending $50,000 on new playground equipment. I think that we still should explore those things, but we need to be smart about it and not try to just budget for one of those things. Just that really does affect the ad valorem tax, property tax. That really does affect that. But all these things I've talked to Stacy about. All the department heads are supposed to be, especially the Parks and Rec. I said, we need to have an idea of what the actual cost is, including the lake. What does it cost us to maintain the roads of the lake, for example? And so it's more of a planning type of a phase, a little bit different in operation. We've been pretty reactive in operation. I'd really like to be a lot more proactive in operation, figuring out what these costs are, coming up with a plan for the improvements. So this is the direction that we're going. There's some money in there to make some improvements next year, especially in the parks, but within our means. It won't be gigantic playground sets, anything like that, unless we can identify a source of funding that allows for that. But even in that instance, we'd have to come in front of the commission because usually there's some kind of match there. And so that's really what we're talking about, Parks and Rec. Their salaries are all over the place here. If that bothers me, there's a lot I want to clean up here with Parks and Rec. I'd like to get it all to where we're not budgeting for electricity out of 3 different funds. I'd like to get it to where we're budgeting for like one fund, or even in the salaries. You notice like in recreation, there's a little bit of money in salaries there. In parks, there's more money in there, and first in Fisher Center, there's money there too, but it's all one fund essentially. That's just a carryover from the way what used to be, where you had Department 25 and the rest of it was in the general fund at one point. And so we need to get that cleaned up. It's a little bit difficult to do that for this budget season this next year, but it's something that Don and I can work on for next year. Yeah, I didn't think it'd be a good idea for us to tackle that this year. Right, you know, go ahead.
Just a quick question. For some reason, I was under the impression that we're required to have a park within so many square in a certain distance within the city.
I don't know the answer to that question. That's the first time I've heard of it, but I can research that
I
and
was
see.
just told that because there used to be a park out on Hatfield on the. That was, and nobody ever played on it, but the park was there. There was a-
It
And
is like a wood piece of playground.
I was told that we were
That was
required,
Sharon.
That was all donated, people just dropped.
it was just
stuff off.
donated, so it wasn't anything the city did.
I don't-
I just wanted to be clear on it.
No, I don't think it was donated, I think people just took their playground equipment out there and dropped it.
Okay. Okay,
I don't think that was the actual city park. so.
there's not even a requirement that we have. to
I'm not
have
aware
a
of one,
park
let's
with
take a look at it.
Yeah,
And then the referees, umpires, that'd be flag football, soccer, baseball and softball, right?
that's correct, yes.
So the baseball and softballs, I mean, cause I know we've talked about that, that they have their own boards. Yeah, we're paying for the ref, or the umpires,
Yes.
but that's probably not a huge make or break thing.
No, I'd have to see what the cost of baseball and softball umpires are compared to the rest of it, soccer and T-ball. I mean, we don't have umpires for T-ball, but I'm sorry, I accept that was stupid, but,
They need to learn.
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
That'd be fun.
That's why
Kids
football,
out.
those are the other two programs, but I'm sure that we can come up with what that cost actually is.
Well,
I don't-
you know, I just know that we've talked about that before.
So employee benefits I talked about earlier, I will jump ahead to the street fund. Once again, this is the sales tax, this is a half-cent sales tax enacted back in the 1980s, like 83, I believe. And so that's why funds are for the streets. We do get some money from the special city and county highway fund, that's set by the state. So those are our two major revenues. There under the street fund, a lot of it, you're gonna see this little bit of a increase in the personnel. A lot of it, you know, as far as when you come to asphalt, I know that Nick's done a good job this year spending asphalt. We're actually, you know, he spent more than $20,000 this year. We're getting into our capital at this point, when it goes into fixing some of the streets, a lot of work on Morrill Avenue this year. There's a lot more left to do, him and I are gonna have a good discussion tomorrow, see what he has left. But they've been really kind of hitting it hard this year, trying to get some areas that were of major concern to fix. I know Morrill Avenue was one that. And lots of discussion on that one, it would just almost tear the front end out of your car driving with it, so. But a lot of it, 82,288 capital, that just allows for projects that we may have come up throughout the year. Nick and I can talk about, I know him and I have talked about, you know, coming up with a plan for the streets themselves. As far as where to start, how are we maintaining these curbs, things like that. You know, it's gonna be a long-term planning type of a thing. You know, it's hopefully by the 2028 budget, we'll have that plan in place. By the end of the year, we want to have a good idea what that is, have those discussions with the city commission. Nick, did you want to add anything to this at all? But that's what I've done with the street fund, transferred employee benefits, transfer to capital reserve. This is just something that we do every year for equipment replacement. And just a few different things, try to build up some money within our CIP. That way, when it does come time to pay for a truck, something like that, we have the money there. We don't have to, our budget doesn't have to try to accommodate big fluctuations of costs going up and down. So I try to keep it as flat as possible. So that's special highway. Anybody have any comments on it? Moving on to debt service, this one's really simple because we don't, although debt service is a tax levy fund, we don't levy taxes to debt service. This is all money in, money out. Any debt that we have incurred with the city is all transferred in from other departments, whether it's sewer, mostly sewer in the Jaws. We have a little bit of water, we have a little bit in special street right now, actually, have quite a bit there too. You know, it's a $1,000 payment every year, but quite a bit in sewer every year. But it's money in, money out, no tax dollars, no property tax dollars go towards the debt service. It is a tax levy fund, but we don't actually levy any property tax to it. And when this is all done, one of the things I'd like to say about this is we're getting ready to pay off a fund, we're getting ready to pay off a loan from KDHE for the last phase of phase of our project that we have going on. That's the lagoon project. We're getting ready to pay that off. And so what you're looking at right here is a picture of what our debt is right now. I know that we're gonna be closing a USDA loan on Friday, but I can't say that to the state because we haven't done that yet. We haven't actually paid off the KDHE loan. And so that's going to save us $83,000 a year of payment out of the sewer fund. But this actually reflects where we're at right now. Like, there will be a USDA loan coming that was always planned for, but it is not reflected in the 2027 budget, just because this is a picture of where we're at right now. By the time we actually approve the budget, we still won't have all those documents done. And so that's why it looks the way it does. I told Bruce earlier that, hey, you know, you're gonna have $83,000 for about a period of 2 years. That's still true, even though the budget doesn't necessarily reflect that. And I can get to that when I talk about sewer. And so I just wanted to kind of point that out. Land bank is very simple right now. I did have one question on the land bank about we just sold some properties. That money does go back to the land bank when we sell those. So it goes back into the land bank funds itself, not to any other fund. Right now, I don't believe we have any land bank properties that are left. Is that correct?
That's right.
And so we sold our last properties there. And so that money will go back into the land bank fund that other properties that we didn't sell. And so that's what that is. MDE inspection is pretty, you know, light. That one's really, there's nothing to do that one. I think the chief probably has a better explanation of what that is than I do, but it's a pretty simple fund. Any inspection fees go towards officer equipment every single year, so that's where it goes towards. We basically keep that one flat every single time. History center, that's this building here, revenue from the trust fund, plus the subsidy to the historical society, distribution to the historical society, what that is. So you see on our actual numbers that we haven't paid anything towards that, but it's just money that the trust gives us in case they want to ever have displays up here at City Hall. That's what that money is for. And so we used to have some traveling displays that came here. It's really the upstairs of the museum, but the historical society hasn't done that for a few years, and so that's kind of where that money goes. Insurance for the building, building maintenance and housekeeping, those are really the only expenditures out there. Skipping forward to Post Lantern, that's that fund that I was talking about. That's that city sales tax quarter sales tax that we had. It brings in roughly, it used to bring in, you know, a couple $100,000 a year. We have $92,000 left of that as we speak. So that's money that we need to spend. Once it's gone, it's gone. Much like the water treatment plant was the same way. There's some extra money that was left in that. It's gone. I can actually take that one out of there completely. I actually didn't even print that off for you. Stormwater. The only thing I'd like to point out here, we used to have some money that came out of here for salaries. I took that out a few years back. It all goes towards stormwater replacement. Right now I have, if you look at 5111, 7173, we have $20,000 in there. And this is where they used to take the curb and gutter grants out of. And so I actually we had talked about redoing that, maybe funding that again. And one of the good things about having a program like that is you can get some value to the city because of it. Because if, like say, if residents want to get their curb and gutters done, we share the cost with the cost share program. And we can actually get some value out of it that way. We did utilize this in the past. I didn't know a good number to put towards this. I put $20,000 towards this. The rest is just in capital. The rest of the 59,000 goes towards, any kind of storm sewer, improvements that need to be made off of, what we have going on. I know there's some major areas that we have. We have some like, inlet boxes on First Street that are pretty deep. We have water that sits at First and, Cherokee. It just pools up there, because it has nowhere to go. We have water that sits at Fourth and, Fourth and, I think it's Woodbury, I believe. Water just pools up there, when it rains. Some of those aren't going to be very expensive. The boxes on First Street would be. Now, we have Second and Oregon that we need to do something with that. We've done some curb and gutter work there. There's a 6-inch pipe that comes out kind of mid-block. It's right between, Oregon and Utah on the east side. There's a 6-inch pipe that actually, you can see it coming out kind of right in the curb and gutter line. And that's actually the storm drains for, that whole intersection of Second and Oregon. And so something needs to be done there. There's plenty of other places in town that we've identified. I was with Brian not too long ago. We went up and looked at where everything crosses up there. I believe it was on Iowa Street, is that correct? Iowa and Iroquois. But that's where we were.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's in Iowa. But we really need to prioritize where, where our biggest problems at. 6th Street obviously is one of them that we've been talking about. I could go on forever about where I know that we have no problems. We have one out of South Suffolk. We need to do something with. So that's what that money goes for. So the rest of that money, I wanted to take any kind of excess, anything that went towards like capital equipment, anything like that. I want to be able to be putting the money that we actually are taking in for a storm sewer and use it for storm sewer. So that's what I've done with it. Does anybody have any thoughts with that?
You said Second and Oregon is in the plan.
It is in the plan. It's something that it's going to have to be something that we probably upsize that pipe, something like what they did, I'm guessing on Potawatomi Street. Yeah, you'd almost have to get all the way to Potawatomi Street. Third Street is where we did that. You'd have to try to get that water all the way to Potawatomi Street. We would have to look at that through a pipe sizing thing and see how much water we're actually getting there. I know some of it drains towards 3rd Street. It's something that Nick would have to look at it. But there's things that need to be done. In the meantime, what we're doing is we're just keeping that cleaned out so it doesn't puddle up. That was always a big problem that we had at, that was always a big problem that we had in Second and Oregon, is that the storm drain get plugged. And it would just pool up there at Second and Oregon.
Those drains on First Street,
Mhm.
has anybody ever had like, an accident or anything because of those?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Cause they're like super deep.
Yeah, and so the ones on the west side, especially as you attack out towards there where the trailer park is.
Yes,
Yeah. Very deep. We replaced a couple of them, but
yeah,
the rest of them need to be done. Pool. There's 2 ways that I transfer money into the pool just to make it work for the year. One of them's from one of the biggest transfers, well, there's equal ones here. From the water fund and this is from Parks and Rec, $35,000 a piece. Other than that, it's just money that's utilized for the pool every single year. The pool is a tough one because you budget as if you're gonna be open every day. You know that you're not open every day. At the end of the day, you look at what your actual costs were, and you only ever transfer how much those actual costs were. And so we're not building up money if we don't need, like say $35,000 for water, we just won't transfer it in there. Whatever the actual cost is going to be. You know, we had a major equipment breakdown Sunday, for example. Our pool pump, you know, it broke, it's burned up, and it will not operate for the rest of the year. And so those types of things happen, but that affects a couple of days of it being open. And so pool's kind of a funny one because you have a year like this where it rained a lot, and our attendance was down, our costs were down accordingly. Our revenue was down too, but our costs were also down because we weren't staffing, for example. Water, what the biggest change that I made in water here was the sales to customers. This is something that I've been looking at over the past couple of years. And this is something that we replaced our water meters. It's our revenue side of everything. I haven't been seeing that 1,003,000 that, you know, we have been budgeting. I haven't been quite seeing that. I kind of took that backwards a little bit. I really want to see where these water meters come out, what our actual revenue is going to be. I don't want to project too high, project our maintenance too high, and then we're spending more money than we're taking in. That's always a bad deal. So I actually did take our revenue back slightly, kind of more in line, you know, 2024, we had 990,000, and it really does vary year to year as well. I mean, things can greatly affect us by how much rain we get, how much people water. We had a major problem with our last year. If you look at our actual 2025 actual, you know, we only took in $926,000 for the revenue. And that's due to the fact that our entire meter system broke at the same time. And so we did replace it, but that's the reason that it looks the way it does, is because we were giving people probably a pretty big break on their bill. Just because it was hard for it was impossible for us to tell what, you know, we would have to go out and manually read those things. You know, it was difficult. And so replacing it was the right thing to do, but I really want to see where that is going to shake out this year. I didn't want to be too over aggressive and say, well, we're going to get a ton more revenue. I don't know that. So I like to see it before I actually, you know, budget for that. So that's the major change. I mean, everything else with water stays pretty much the same. The salaries went up, that's to accommodate, like I said, administration costs. That's kind of where water stands as far as what I was talking about. As far as the fund goes, we still have money in there to maintain a water system. Yeah, I'm not really concerned about where it's at right now, as far as needing to raise rates, anything like that. I don't think that's necessary. Sewer fund, I feel a little bit better about it now than I did 6 months ago. We have USDA on board. They're doing everything that they need to be doing now to move these projects forward. A lot of correspondence with them, a lot of very quick correspondence with them. So that's been good. Like I said earlier, his actual transfer to bond and interest is going to be a little bit different. And he should end up with about $83,000 more to maintain the sewer system. I know there's some pumps and things like that that he's been wanting to place out there, which will help with that. But there's also a healthy amount of money in there. Bruce has done a good job trying to figure out how much money do we need every year to maintain the UV system. That is very important. And just equipment maintenance, as you can see, the last couple of years, we've really upped the budget on equipment maintenance. And we're trying to tackle some of those major issues that we do have out there. So we have kind of a window of opportunity before our next bond payment comes on, which will be very similar to what we have now, to do some work there. As far as getting some of those equipment replaced, some of it's everything that you're talking about in the sewer system. It's very, very expensive.
Did we get through all the, air compressors, replace all of them now, or? are we still-
One left. There's one left that they need to do. So it's one of the blowers, that's the only one that they have left. They've done 4 of them, they have 5. There's one more that they have left to do. Airport was the last one I like to talk about here. This one's pretty simple too. This is all just hangar rental. We do our land, well, it's actually land grant is where we get most of ours from. It's a farm ground around the airport itself. And so that's where we get most of our income from for the airport. Hangar rental, we get a little bit, you know, that's pretty low. But the expenses, the capital expenses, you know, I put that money in capital. There's some for electricity, that's just the lights for runway lights and things like that. The rest of it's in capital for maintaining the runways. I've talked to some of the individuals that know the most about this. And they are the people that actually fly in and out of that airport. We have some individuals that are really willing to want to help us find a plan that actually works for the airport, whether that's through mowing, whether that's through shaping the runways, whatever that might be. I don't know what the actual cost to maintain, like say, if we need to be putting X amount of grass seed down every year, that way we're maintaining what our runways are. Brian's talked for years about just rolling runways, things like that. But we have to get a program together out there to where we're maintaining our airstrip the way that it needs to be done. And so there's a lot that goes into that I don't know quite yet. That's there, I have people helping with that because I'm not an expert. I'm just gonna be flat honest. You know, on some of that stuff I don't know. But we'll work through that. And so that's why I have the money in capital. Like I said, it's just so we can spend it as it comes in. And actually try to do something to maintain the airport that we have. That's all I have. That's the budget in a nutshell this year.
The big nutshell.
Yes. Now let me get to the part where you actually need to approve, which would be, let me get to it, I put it in the packet. And so the numbers that I have within the packet are the numbers that we would actually be advertising in the paper. We have to get that advertisement in by tomorrow in order to meet the requirement to get it in the paper by Thursday. That's our notification requirement. And we have to have 10 days in between our next meeting, which we do have. But the motion that I would need is to advertise for what I sent in the packet. For those of the mill levy rates, and I can call it out right here for you once I get done.
We just have to find out the budget hearing. So
No, we don't have to.
you will approve the budget, set that. We tonight, we just need to say.
We just need to set
approve
the
the
budget
hearing.
hearing date.
Yes.
Oh, for the 20. Oh. So that's what I need tonight is to set that budget hearing date for the 24th. Not 5:35.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion. To approve publication of the notice of the budget hearing for August 24th at 5:35 PM.
Second. Then moved in a second to do what Tom just said. Any comments from the public? Any comments from commissioners? Not Tom.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Motion passed 5-0. Okay, you've got to get that fire alarm thing figured out. I don't know how you guys work in that.
We have.
It's really the IPP.
We contacted us again today.
You can hear me?
Here it is.
We also did get, in touch with the trust, to let them know what's going on as well. They're actually having a heating and air conditioning people come here to kind of look at the problem. see if they can come up with a solution for this. And so this is why we're gonna be looking at it fairly.
Oh, it's just been constant.
I have a couple of questions that just out of my own curiosity.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think for this year, we budgeted the money for some security cameras in various buildings.
Yes.
Is that still gonna, is that happening?
Yeah, so a lot of that was the parts of it.
Right.
And so the money that's going towards security cameras and parks and rec, gonna be going towards like Noble Field, skate park, that's one that we're working on as well. But yeah, so we did replace ones, the Fisher Center, for example. You had security cameras at Brooding Park, we're adding the ones at Noble Park, which will encompass a new softball field as well. But we have been spending some of that, we have been spending that money.
And then on the sewer worksheet, you had 18,000 for new equipment, but it didn't say what new equipment that is, what.
No, I just gave it here because of the mistake.
That was on the worksheet.
You're the.
Oh, the worksheet part, that. That new equipment on there, that's what I stopped at. And so I'm going to go through, like I said, there's a reason I didn't print some of those off. Was because that part isn't actually done, I've been really laser focused on the state form. That's the part I need to do still.
Well, it says proposed 2025, but
Right.
at the top, it's got 27, I didn't know.
Yeah,
I
no,
thought it carried over from the-
that, if you go to the actual sewer budget itself, I don't have anything for actual new.
Okay, that's fine, I just wondered.
But that's a good question. I mean, I can see how that would confuse you. I understand, trust me. But I've been really focused on making sure that our state form, the expenditures there and our working budget, everything coincides. That when we put the money in, when we actually put the budget into the system, that everything's correct. Because really, I mean, our budget authority is set by what we have the state form. I have to make sure that everything matches. Cause some of this extra stuff that I put on there, like, for example, the wages on this won't be correct quite yet. They will be, but just not quite yet. And so everybody will get this form at the end of the year when we go into the next budget season. Before we get to the next budget, all this information will be correct. It won't take me long, honestly. It'll take me a couple of days to get it all right, but I've been focused.
You just don't know what you've been doing.
I've been focused in other areas, so that's what I'm.
Great vacation.
So that is all I have for the budget for tonight. If you have any other thoughts or anything like that, just let me know. But that is where I'm at there. So,
I do appreciate that you printed it out, because I usually try and follow on online, and it's so much easier.
yeah,
So thank you for doing that. I appreciate it.
Thank you for putting all your hard
go
work into it.
ahead.
I'll apologize, I didn't bring this up earlier, but, I was asked, commission meetings ago in regards to the fleet. I wanted to bring that up. When I first started, we had 8 vehicles, right now we have 7 vehicles, 1 is gone. We were able to take the money proceeds after writing a report into insurance and got a return on that vehicle that went down. And in the meantime, we had another vehicle that had an engine problem. We were able to take that money and replace that engine, and with 0 cost to the taxpayer because it was taken care of as far as the insurance goes. We did a needs assessment on the 3 take-home vehicles, and based upon that needs assessment, you only need 1 take-home vehicle, so we reduced that as well. That also reduces the turnaround on one of those take-home vehicles, about 40 miles a day extra for 5 days a week or ever. So that's not happening anymore. And we, as Brad mentioned, we delayed CIP for replacement of the vehicle. That would probably be the Tahoe, which is next, about it's over 135,000 miles. But luckily, we don't have to do that this year. We can do it next year because we got a consolidation for 2 years. In addition, that engine that we replaced in the one vehicle has about 73,000 miles, and with the reduced mileage on that, that should last us quite a while. So that would be very helpful for that. The body is 135,000, but the engine will be 73,000 mile engine, so. That's where we are in that, and that was specifically asked by Mr. Shepherd, and some of you folks asked me in regards to the fleet, so I want to make sure you got that information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Brad? I guess we've already made motions, so I guess we can go ahead and move on. So nothing under communications, governing body comments. Just a reminder, not that you guys don't already know that, but teachers report back to school on Wednesday and then kids will be a week after that. So those flashing yellow school zones are like for real now, so make sure you're paying attention to that. We're gonna get ready for a great 2026-27 school year with the new person at the helm with Kylie Gates being superintendent, so. Wish everybody the best of luck start for school year. Dave?
I'd like to thank Don and all of the office staff for the good report that I heard about the audit. I know that's a ton of work and pull your hair out trying to use our software to get it all done. So pass that on to the folks here on stage too, that I appreciate all your work and it was good. Turned out good, if we had a good clean audit, the way I understand it, so thank you.
Thank you. I will let them know.
Okay, Tom?
I have to.
Brian?
I'm all good. Thank you.
Laura?
I have nothing, thank you.
I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Will we adjourn?
Second. Move to second, Don?
All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Opposed? Motion passes.